Check podcasts.
Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. This is Chamber Chats. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. Chamber Chats is made possible by the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union. One of those folks is going to join us in a couple of seconds here. We are also broadcasting, of course, as always, from the traditional ancestral territory of the Lekwungen-speaking Coast Salish nations, the Songhees and the Esquimalt. It is always a privilege and an honor to be living and working alongside them. We'll talk money today. As the pandemic has come along, we've seen a great disruption in our economy and in our dollar flow and in the way business operates. But with all of that disruption going on at the same time, there were some usual forms of commerce happening with people buying and selling their business. One of the things that we've also seen is a number of people have decided that they're out. They're going to retire. They want to sell their business. They're going to move along. So we're going to talk about that today and the process of doing it and what's involved to do that successfully. To talk with us about that today, a couple of people. Jenn Bogwald makes a return to Chamber Chats for the second time. Jenn is a partner and business advisor at MNP, who are one of our Chamber champions, by the way. Jenn, nice to see you again.
Yep, nice to see you too, Bruce.
And Jesse Honkanen is with us as well. He is the Regional Manager of Business Banking for our friends at Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union. Jesse, nice to see you.
Thanks for having me, Bruce.
So right from the beginning, this whole idea, Jenn, I'll start with you. People are looking to sell their business right now because they want to retire, they want to get out, they're tired of it, they found some issues through the pandemic. What are you hearing about that from people right now?
Well, I think the pandemic has given us all a little bit of a chance to step back and reassess our priorities. And what I'm hearing out there is a lot of people, it's actually sped up their desire to want to retire and exit from their business. So, and that's, spend more time with family, spend more time maybe traveling now that they can, but it's really made them a little impatient, to be quite honest.
And Jesse, what are you hearing from Island Savings clients and members?
Yeah, very similar to Jenn. I think, COVID brought a lot of things, but it also brought members and clients time to think and recollect that what's important to them. And, and in general, that's health and family. And, obviously, as you enter into retirement, those are two things that play a big picture.
And I'll stick with you for a second, Jesse. How much of it is people aging out and how much of it is people that, as Jenn said, are just, I'm tired of this, I'm out, I'm tired, I want to get out, I'm done.
Yeah, a bit of both. I think, some people will like working. They want to work for as long as they can. Others, want to work until they have to work. So I think it really just depends on the individual preference. For some people, we have some people saying, I'm out, I'm retiring, want to sell my business. And we have others that are saying, hey, I'm good. I'm going to continue working because I really enjoy it.
Yeah. Jenn, what's the balance with you? How much of it is aging out and how much of it is just, I got to go?
It's a combination for sure. I think the majority of people found themselves actually working quite a bit harder through the pandemic to navigate all the uncertainties. So I think what it is, it's their last hurrah. They're like, you know what, I'm done. I don't want to deal with all these business challenges anymore. And I just don't want to have to ride another storm. I'm hearing, a lot of that.
So we're going to, a little later on in the conversation, we're going to talk about people who want to buy those businesses. Right now, we want to talk about it from a seller point of view. How do you determine what you can get for your business? And Jenn, I'll stick with you with this. I mean, people might be living thinking, oh, my company is worth this because of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How accurate is that? Like, what are the factors in determining the value of a business?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors and what we call value drivers to help determine what the actual price of a business is. One of my favorite things that I tell people is the more valuable you are to your business, the less value your business has. So we spend a lot of time actually making the owners redundant in their businesses, which it isn't intuitive, but a lot of people do come with a lot of pride in that they're so critical in their business. But that in fact is actually not good if you're trying to sell your business.
Yeah, because if it can't operate without you, nobody wants to take it on.
Exactly. Too much risk in the transition, right? So from a buyer's perspective, the owner doesn't come with the business. So we need to be sure that that business is running and successful without the owner. So it's often something that has to be done over a series of years and a lot of steps of working with the owner to help them change their ways to manage a different way so that they can actually step back and have a saleable business.
Yeah. Jesse, tell me about the conversation you had with somebody who wants to sell their business.
Yeah, I'd echo Jenn, like it really doesn't start a year before or 6 months before. It's 3 to 5 years before. You're looking to identify, how am I going to exit this business? Am I going to retire? Am I going to sell? Am I going to close up shop? What does that exit look like? And then identifying people that could purchase the business. Maybe it's, you're going to gift it to family. Maybe you're going to try to sell it, but it's working with a tax professional, 3 to 5 years out. And as you get a bit closer, obviously involving legal, involving the financial institution as well. We just completed a transaction for a member who bought the business from somebody working there 35 years ago. And now they're selling to somebody who has worked for the business for 15 years. So it's, third generation, non-family transfer. And we've been involved for a year, and actually MNP, not Jen's office, we're involved for longer than that. So it takes a little while. It takes a bit of patience to make sure you get it right, because there can be a lot of tax consequences, both for the buyer and seller, to make sure to do it right.
Yeah. Jesse, let's talk about dollars and cents and money, because people want to get as much out of it as they can. How do you, and I've heard a number of sometimes it's 3 years gross revenue, 5 years gross, but how do you determine the actual monetary value once you're headed toward a deal?
It's easy to answer. It depends. Each business is going to have a different. Each business is going to have a different value to it. Jen talked about the factors of value in evaluating a business. Like really, I always say a business is worth as much as someone who's going to pay for it. And for me, if you don't have a lot of assets in the business and you're looking to sell goodwill, that's tougher, right? Because you're not buying assets, you're looking at buying goodwill, and that's why you want to get really out in front of it. So in a long answer, which is really a short answer, is it depends on the situation.
And that's why a professional like the two of you, or someone who does similar work, is important if you're thinking of selling or buying a business right now. But another factor too, I guess, Jesse, is when you take a look at what the company looks like, there are assets involved, there may be debt outstanding, there could be assets outstanding, revenue yet to come in. All of that has to be factored, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's multiple ways to skin a cat and sell a business. There's an asset share, there's a sales share, there could be excluded items on a share sale. So I think it's, again, getting in front of it as fast as you can and talking to a professional is going to really help you be able to get top dollar for your business with the least tax consequences as possible.
And how often, sorry, Jen, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, quite often I see owners not understanding the difference between selling assets or selling the shares of your business. And that's something you really want to understand early on and come up with a strategy that suits you specifically. It's not that one size fits all, but you need to understand the difference such that when you start talking about it, you're actually understanding what you're valuing. So yeah, just to echo, there's huge tax consequences to different structures. And if you can get ahead of it, you're going to maximize what ends up in your pocket.
Yeah. We want to talk a little bit more now about what the pandemic did to disrupt the value of business. We'll talk about that next. On Chamber Chats today, we are talking about business succession, selling and buying businesses either in or outside of a pandemic. Two people with us today who are experts in that. Jenn Bogwald is a partner and business advisor with MNP, one of our chamber champions, and Jesse Honkanen is regional manager of business banking for Island Savings, which is actually one of the presenting sponsors of this thing. And Jesse, you're a guy that you've worked in different parts of the island and you know the island, but across the whole spectrum of what you've seen within your members' businesses, how has the pandemic impacted businesses in general? In other words, has anybody lost value of their business because of the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, it really depends. If somebody has a real estate focused business, real estate has done well through the entire pandemic. We haven't seen property values fall, but really what we're talking about here is we're talking about the business, not the assets that come with the business. And a lot of businesses have done really well and flourished during COVID. I think about some examples: cleaning companies, fitness equipment companies who are selling at car dealerships, all these sorts of companies that have really flourished through COVID. And obviously that's driven their value up. But I mean, again, when we look at the valuation of company, it's challenging. And Jen sees this all the time in her world, where you're looking at financial statements from 2019 pre-COVID. They're a lot different for most companies than if you're looking at the last 2 years of financials. So that presents some challenges for buyers and sellers and valuators. Yeah, for sure. So I think for the next few years to come, there's still going to be those questions of, what's the true value of a company that's did well in COVID, will it continue? Versus those companies that had a tough time and now are looking to recoup what they had pre-COVID.
Yeah, in the notes that I made for this, Jen, when we're talking about people who had disruptions or maybe lost value during the pandemic, that could be because of supply, materials, workers, cost of materials, and general uncertainty. You're hearing all of that and more, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The ones that I think suffered the most were the ones that relied on in-person service. So like healthcare, tourism, like anyone who required people to be there. The ones that did the best, like Jesse mentioned, is the construction industry. You know, they were able to put risk management protocols in place and manage through it. But I've also seen construction companies that did very poorly during the pandemic. So when you speak of value, what I think the pandemic has done is the companies that did well through the pandemic can now put that on their plus sheet of like things they've done well and look at all these challenges that came at them and they were able to persevere. And companies that had sort of industry factors that were actually positive but actually didn't do well, now that would reduce the value of their business because people are going to look at that and say, how come your peers did well and you didn't? What does that say for your business and the value? So that's really, I think, how it comes back. And we're not going to see businesses using 2020 and 2021 as an EBITDA multiplier or using it as an indication of future cash flow. But I do think it indicates the business's resilience to challenges.
Yeah, let's point out EBITDA is earnings before
interest, depreciation, taxes, and amortization.
There it is. You learn something every day on the Chamber Chats.
Yeah. Cash flow, essentially the business's cash flow.
How many times have you heard someone say to you, Jen, I was planning to retire, but because of COVID now I can't?
I have heard that. Yeah, absolutely. And actually before COVID, I heard that all the time as well. And it wasn't about COVID. It's just, I was going to retire, but just, no, I still can't retire. So I think COVID's now the new excuse.
Yeah, Jesse, you're hearing the same thing?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, we've had a lot of our members getting ready for retirement and COVID hit and they put it off because they didn't know exactly what's happening. When we've also seen, we're now just about 2.5 years from the start of COVID. And people are now looking at that saying, like, do I really want to retire? Are we out of this yet? And they're delaying retirement because they want to make sure. And they want to be able to sell their business when they feel it's worth. And right now is not an opportune selling time, perhaps in their business, but for some, it may be an opportune selling business, opportune selling time.
Yeah. So the pandemic also kind of in the disruption factor, whether it be positive or negative, as people's businesses operated, instability was revealed, but sustainability was also revealed. Jesse, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, instability, I think one of the things that in any business that's shown is your relationships. So your relationships with your clients, the relationships with your vendors, those were critical for businesses in the early days of COVID. I can remember vividly a restaurant here in Victoria calling me in March when COVID first hit out and says, like, you're my second call. First call was to my lawyer, right? To make sure to talk about lease. And again, we want to get ahead of this. We want to make sure we want to pay our loan. We want to continue to operate, but we know there's going to be a rough season ahead. So it's one of the things I think about the most through COVID is that first phone call I got from one of our members saying they value our relationship, and we worked through it and they've prospered and they're doing really well. And then I would also say what it also focused is for people who had a lot of different revenue streams, it caused them maybe to focus on their core business. Cutting down expenses, expense management was obviously critical through COVID, and focusing on their core business. If it was a profitable business, or if it wasn't a profitable business, it made them focus on other avenues to generate revenue through COVID.
Yeah, we're having a general conversation about succession planning if you want to either acquire or divest yourself of a business. One of the big disruptors, in addition to the pandemic itself, has been inflation, the cost of things in the last year and a half or so. So, Jen, what kind of a factor is that in people determining their next steps right now? Because it's rapidly escalating.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a huge factor. The inflation is hitting our entire workforce, and, in turn, the wage costs are going up. So for a lot of businesses, wages can be the largest cost that they have. And so it's forcing people to be thinking more about efficiencies and how are we going to manage with what we have, and reprice their own services or goods to make sure that they're keeping up with their costs. So yeah, it's a huge factor for sure.
Yeah, Jesse, what do you remember saying in relation to inflation?
Yeah, very similar. I mean, there's two things to do. There's either reprice your services or eat the cost, right? And eating the cost is hard when the profit margin is already quite slim. So I think really what it is, it's just a price increase for everyone, and that's really the definition of inflation. Is over time things are going to cost more, and obviously during COVID, that maximized even more.
So the idea in the process of buying or selling a business, or the succession plan that may be in place, is also dependent upon interest rates. I want to talk about that next. Chamber Chats today, we're speaking with Jenn Bogwald, who is a partner and a business advisor with MNP, a chamber champion, and Jesse Honkanen is the regional manager for business banking for Island Savings, who are the presenting sponsor for this, and they're so good at what they do. We want to include them in this conversation. So, Jesse, interest rates are going up. They're not going up as fast as they could. They hopefully will not get as high as they have been in the past. But what's going on as business people now try and plan their succession plans or acquisition of a business related to interest?
Yeah, I mean, interest rates are definitely something that's important. I mean, fixed rate commercial loans are based on bond yield, and the bond yield has been moving around a lot over the last 30 days. So it's been tough to keep on top of it. I know there are members. We started talking about loans 60 days ago, and we were talking about a loan at 4%, and we're talking about a loan at 5.5%. So that's a big difference. It's a 33% increase in interest cost, right? So I think it's just having those discussions. I would also say that if there's expansion that needs to happen or transition that's going to happen, interest rates are going to be what they're going to be. That's not something you really can control. I mean, obviously, we're going to have a discussion about fixed rate versus variable rate, and fixed rate works for some, variable rate works for others. So really, it's just looking at the situation and what works best for them.
Yeah, I mean, paying higher interest rates may impact your ability to pay down the principal at the same time, too. Jenn, what are you hearing about the same thing, about what interest rates are going to do to business practice and value?
Yeah. And I think everybody, knows that interest rates have been very, very low for so long that an increase is actually not a shock at all. I mean, we need something to cool down the inflation. And I think most people are okay with a bit of an interest rate hike. We're hoping that it doesn't continue to go, but businesses, of course, revisiting their debt and understanding their exposure to further fluctuations. As far as business transitions themselves, I think that what it has done is added a little bit of uncertainty to the sellers in trying to, have comfort that they've got enough to retire. And from the buyer's perspective, there's a housing crisis. They can't afford to live here. They can't afford. So it's feeling even further away from possible of being able to afford to buy in. So there's all sorts of strategies we can work through, but that's what I'm hearing from people, is that there's just a little bit more trepidation out there because of the rising interest rates.
And Bruce, if I may,
Yes.
there's also something to consider. Is there is pure interest cost, but then there's also cash flow, and those are two different, very different vehicles. And I think it's important for a business owner to understand, what is interest cost versus what does cash flow look like, because some people are solely focused on cash flow, which really you should be, especially when you're buying a business, where others are really focused on trying to save the most amount of interest possible. And for some, that's a good thing, but for others, they'll sacrifice interest rate for maybe a longer amortization.
And when you're looking at sustaining the viability of a business that you either want to buy or sell, technology is a big part of that, because here we are on Zoom. Everybody's got technology as a part of what they're doing now. We hear from chamber members all the time about them being afraid that they can't keep up with the cost of upgrading their technology. But that's something you have to do to maintain the value of your business, and that's what you want in a business that you want to acquire when you're going to be doing that. So, Jesse, how much are you hearing from people saying, I got to upgrade my technology? How do I do that?
Yeah, I think like early days of COVID, people were forced, and I can use the technology, what we're talking on today, even something as simple as plexiglass. right? All those things are technology. But we saw a lot of requests early days of COVID of people reaching out saying, I need to buy technology. I need to stay ahead of the game. Because obviously the risk of not staying up to date is you're going to have a competitor that's going to be able to produce that product for cheaper and more efficiently, which makes it harder for your business to compete.
And Jenn, same thing, technology and how it operates with business. And I'm an older guy, so I can say this, but there are a lot of older people who are not quite as malleable when it comes to that and understanding technology. But how important is it for these businesses to stay up to date with their tech?
Yeah, and the answer, in my opinion, depends, because it's, as a seller, if you don't put the effort in to upgrade your business to be more current with process and technology, then someone else is going to see it as an opportunity to do that after they buy it. So it's either you put the work in now and do it, or someone else is going to pay you less for your business and they're going to put the work in and do it. So you've got a choice. So it depends. Again, it comes down to, as someone who's looking to exit their business, do you understand what you need to exit? And if you have a gap of your expectation through retirement and what we think your business is actually worth, you may need to put effort into putting technology and other efficiencies into your business so that you can maximize the value. So it's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about local businesses here is who you folks deal with. And I wanted just to wrap this up, kind of bring a global issue back closer to home. At the time of this recording, the Russia-Ukraine circumstance is still raging. If not increasing and accelerating. Has that impacted much in the way of business, Jenn, that you've been dealing with?
I'd say, again, it's adding to the uncertainty and the anxiety of everybody that's out there. Obviously, costs of fuel has gone up. So maybe people are second guessing travel requirements and like the use of oil in their business. But I think for the most part, what I'm seeing is people are just more anxious than they've ever been, and maybe less sure.
Yeah. So Jesse, what are you hearing from people?
Yeah, I mean, fuel is the big one. Most businesses need fuel to operate. And the other one we've seen in our agriculture clientele is fertilizer. So Russia's main export was fertilizer last year to Canada. So the cost of fertilizer has tripled, which obviously brings the cost to produce produce up, which obviously passes on to the consumer. I mean, that's why you're seeing produce prices higher than normal.
Yeah, food security is another matter altogether, which we're going to tackle here on a future Chamber Chat. But thank you both for your advice today. As always, we would suggest that people reach out to both of you and your organizations or similar ones to get the advice they need about business succession valuation, being it a buy or a sell or whatever it might be. But thank you both for being here. Jesse Honkanen is the Regional Manager of Business Banking for Island Savings, and Jenn Bogwald is a Partner and Business Advisor with MNP, a Chamber Champion. Thank you to you both. And I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.